सच्चिदानन्दाकारं श्रुतिसरससारं समरसं निराधाराधारं भवजलधिपारं परगुणं रमाग्रीवाहारं व्रजवनविहारं हरनुतं सदा तं गोविन्दं परमसुखकन्दं भजत रे। महाम्भोधिस्थानं मनोज्ञं सुज्ञानं मुनिजननिधानं ध्रुवपदं सदा तं गोविन्दं परमसुखकन्दं भजत रे।
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone for today's session. So those were few trailers of our upcoming Shri Krishna Janmashtami festival, which is completely digital on 11th and 12th of August. I'll share more information about the festival towards the end of today's session. So today's session, as it is named, it is called Boundless Happiness. So now when someone hears this question, boundless happiness seems to be a kind of a contradiction, because whatever we experience in the mainstream world around us, it has certain limitations. That is because we have limited senses. Say for example, let's think about the vision, the eyes. So the science explains us that the human eye can only recognize those colors between V and R, VIB-GYOR they call it. Anything beyond V, that is termed as ultraviolet, and anything termed beyond R, that is infrared, the human eye cannot detect them. Similarly, when it comes to the ears, there is something known as audible frequency range. So any sound below 20 decibels or anything beyond 20 kilodecibels or 20,000 decibels, the human ears cannot perceive. Similarly, the skin, it can't touch very hot or cold. So when all of these senses have limited sense perception, then a question can arise: how can we experience boundless happiness? What is this boundless happiness? Do you mean to say that the joy that I can experience in my life has no limits, has no boundaries? The answer is yes. This is what Krishna is explaining to us in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, text 22 and 23. Krishna is explaining, Sukham atyantikam yatta buddhigrayam atindriyam vetti yatra na chaivayam stitas challati tattvataha. So Krishna is using two important words in this verse, 6.22. Sukham atyantikam. So that sukham is happiness. Ati antikam. So it is something beyond the senses. Sukham atyantikam, beyond the sensual perception. Buddhigrayam atindriyam, indriya is senses. And sukham atyantikam, the supreme happiness, the boundless happiness, atyantikam is unlimited, that you can experience when you go beyond, that is atindriyam. Indriya is senses. Atindriya is transcending senses. So Krishna is talking about a very unique principle in this verse. When you transcend yourself beyond the senses, then you can experience the unlimited or boundless happiness. And what is the outcome of experiencing such an unlimited or boundless happiness? Vyakti yatra na chaivayam stitas chalati tatvataha. So once having experienced this, you will never deviate, you will never go away from the truth. And then what is the second byproduct of experiencing this? Yam laptva chaparam labham. Having once experienced this happiness, then you will not consider anything else to be equal to or more than this. And the result of this kind of an realization, this kind of an experience of unlimited happiness is that yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. So even amidst the greatest kind of miseries, the greatest kind of material tribulation, one will not be vichalyate, he will not be disturbed, he will be undeterred by all the external tribulations that is happening around him. So generally last few months we all have been experiencing the COVID debacle and many lives that it has costed us. So many people who are in touch with us keep asking us this common question that Swamiji, how do we not get affected by these external things? So this is the secret that Sri Krishna is mentioning in the Bhagavad Gita, that once having experiencing this supreme happiness, which is beyond the senses, then you will never be deviated from the truth, and you can face any misery from the external world without getting disturbed. So this is the secret for boundless happiness. So now one can ask a question. So all of these, what you explained so far, is centered around a simple principle that happiness which is experienced beyond the senses. Now, what is there beyond the senses? How do we understand or perceive something connected to happiness, something connected beyond the senses? So I came across one interesting story I wish to share with all of you today. There was once a merchant who was extremely successful in his career, and he amassed a lot of wealth, riches, and he became quite popular in the whole city. And he was married to not just one, but two, but three, but four wives. And he led a very happy and contented life. Now, don't ask me, how is it that he had four wives and yet led a happy and contented life? No, I am not experienced in that to tell. So, but then in this case, he had four wives and yet led a very fulfilling life. As the years passed by, he was diagnosed with a critical illness and he was lying on the deathbed. So he was practically counting his days, and he was sure that there is not much time left for him. Now, during the course of his life, so many years that he led a very successful and a contented life with the four wives, out of the four wives, he loved his fourth wife the most. He got her the best of the garments, the finest of the jewelry, the best of the delicacies. He treated her to the best of his capacity, loved her the most. He also loved his third wife because she was the most beautiful and the prettiest. He considered her to be an angel from heaven. And that is why whenever he had high socialite parties, friends, gatherings, he used to always take his third wife so that he can show off her to them. And he also liked his second wife. That's because she was the most intelligent. Whenever this merchant had some of the complexities or difficulties in his business, he used to turn to his second wife, and practically every time he approached her, she used to give an out-of-the-box solution and solve that problem. Whereas the first wife was the modest of the all the four, and she had none of these extraordinary qualities or features, and she was a simple woman, and therefore the merchant did not pay much attention to his first wife. He kind of neglected her. So this is how he led his life for many, many years and decades. Now that when he was on the deathbed, he was feeling for the first time in his life that there is nobody coming to his support. There is no companionship. And when he was thinking of his last journey beyond this world, he was getting scared. So that's when he got a desire. Why don't I request one of these wives to travel along with me in this last journey? I have taken care all my life. Will they not agree to come along with me for this last one journey? So with this kind of a faith, he first of all approached the fourth wife, whom he loved the most. So when the merchant requested the wife, my dear wife, I have taken care of you all my life. In this last journey of mine, will you please come with me? The fourth wife gave her reply. What was the reply? No way! And she walked off. Just 2 words, no way. So this reply from the fourth wife affected the merchant a lot. It was almost like a knife being pierced into his heart. So, but merchant was still confident that one of the other 3 wives would agree. And then he naturally approached his third wife, who was the most beautiful. And when he again expressed the same request, will you travel with me in this one last journey? And the third wife replied, why do you expect me to travel with you? The life here is so comfortable. And in fact, when you die, I shall marry another rich person and enjoy life over here. These words made the husband, the merchant, completely shattered. At least the fourth wife said no way and walked off. But then here, the third wife's words that she's going to marry someone else, the merchant was devastated practically. So, but still, he had some little hope, and with tears brimming in his eyes, he approached the second wife, and upon hearing his request, the second wife, in fact, she was the most considerate of all the other wives, the fourth and the third. She said, I can't come with you, but then at the most I can do is I'll walk up to the grave to see your final rituals being done. I can walk up to the grave and not beyond that. So when this reply came from his second wife, the merchant was now had no more hope, and he didn't even want to approach the first wife because he had never paid any attention to her. He never cared for her. She was completely neglected. And when he had practically no hopes, there came a silent voice, a low voice, which said, my dear husband, I am there with you to travel in your last journey. And that was none other than the first wife. So at that time, the merchant realized, and he expressed his grief to the first wife that I have not taken any care of you, but still you are ready to travel with me. Ideally, I should have taken good care of you, but I was enamored by these external things and I took care of those 3 wives. But today you are the one who was standing besides me. So this was the realization by the merchant on the deathbed. So now the Shastras explain that each of us have 4 wives. So if it's a man, 4 wives, if it's a woman, 4 husbands. So each of us have 4 spouses. And the Shastras explain that the 4th wife is nothing but our body. Just like the merchant, he invested so much money in buying her the finest of the garments, the clothing, the jewelry, delicacies, and all of that. So this is what happens to us. We take care, so good care of our bodies. But will this body last forever? Now the third wife is nothing but all the wealth, possession, status, riches that we possess. Now when we leave this world, just like the third wife replied to the husband, the merchant, that life over here is so good that in fact when you die, I shall marry some other person and live here comfortably. So now don't you see, this is the same thing that is happening for all the riches and wealth that we amass, that we strive for in the whole life. When we leave this body, all these riches, wealth, status, possession, bank balance, everything goes to someone else. We cannot enjoy them, what we gained with so much of hardship. And that is why it's so indicative when the third wife said, I'll marry someone else. And the second wife, she said that I can come up to the grave. And the Shastras explain, the second wife represents our near and dear ones, our friends, our family, and all of the relatives. So when this body leaves, the utmost what they'll do is come up to the grave. Rather, these days, probably, I remember when I was in a primary school, when my grandfather passed away. So I was a little bit starting to understand what is the meaning of passing away, death, and all these things. So then it was quite a serious thing. So and then I was very strict, very serious, and I didn't know how to talk. So I was, very, very serious. And I expected the same thing all around us. But then we went to the graveyard and came back, and the very next day, the whole environment changed very much. So people, ladies in the home started discussing about the cooking, the preparations on the evening, and some students, youngsters started seeing some movies and all of these. So for a moment I was surprised what happened. So at least in the olden days, you could see a photograph of a person with a lamp, and for they will have that ceremony for about 12 days or 13 days, and so some kind of a sobbing will be there on the relatives part. So but these days even that is missing. And the first wife that represents first wife is nothing but our soul, Atma, soul. So now the merchant, just like he realized on the deathbed that neither the fourth, nor the third, nor the second wife came to his help, but only the first wife. Similarly, we have to, at some point in our lives, understand that the happiness that we are seeking for cannot come from any of these things. So then you might ask me a question that, do you mean to say that we should not earn money? We should not lead a family life? Do you mean to say that we should not take good care of our body? Is taking good care, maintaining the health, is it wrong? No. The Shastras never say, don't take care of your second, third, and fourth wives. It is only saying that along with fourth, third, and second, please do also take good care of your first wife. It is inevitable that we have to take care of the second, third, and fourth wives. Wealth is essential. Even if you have to buy your food, you'll need money. So, and even if you have to do spiritual practices, the body has to stay active, healthy. So we are not here to say that we should not amass riches, we should not take care of the body, but all that Bhagavad Gita is explaining is there is a spiritual dimension to our lives, and that dimension is what is going to give us, lead us to boundless happiness. This is what the Shastras are explaining. So before I continue the talk, since the video session today is being streamed on YouTube, if at all any of you have any questions, request you to please post them on the chat section in the channel below, and we will take them at the end of the session. So now just now we discussed about the 4 wives, and the first wife we talked about the soul, and we said that similarly in our lives, to avoid regretting like the merchant on a deathbed, we have to take care of the first wife, which is the soul. So now when I gave this session some days ago to a college, to a group of students, so one guy stopped me in the speech, in the middle of the speech, and asked me, Swamiji, I understand what you said in comparison to 4th, 3rd, and 2nd wives. The body, the riches, and the friends and relatives. But what is this soul? Because this is something I am not able to understand. What is this soul? So this is where, Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON and our dear spiritual master, explains how to understand or how to perceive the meaning of the soul. He gives a very nice analogy. He says, say for example, I ask you a question, whose mobile phone is that? You are having a mobile, and when I met you, I asked you a question, whose mobile is that? What's your answer? Your answer will be, that's my mobile. It's mine, right? You don't say, I mobile. Why don't you say I mobile? Because you are not the mobile. And why do you say my mobile? Because the mobile belongs to you. So let's park this analogy for a while. So let's assume that you were driving the car. You went on a long drive for about few hours, and at the end of the journey, you are describing to your friend that it was quite a long drive, exhausting. So my hands are paining. So now when you're saying my hands are paining, what is that? Please underline that and note this phrase. You say my hands are paining. Why don't we say I hands or I hand? That's because we are not the hand, and we say my hands because hands belong to us. Let's extend this analogy. So suppose you are on a continuous workout. You exercised strenuously for about an hour or so, and at the end of the session, you are describing to your friend, my body is tired. Now again, in this phrase, you are saying my body is tired. Why are you saying my body and not I body? That's because you are not the body, and you say my body, that's because body belongs to you. So now if you put all these analogies together, we said my mobile because mobile belong to us and I'm not the mobile. We said my hand and my body because hands and body belong to us and we are not the hands and the body. So the question that comes up is, if when you say my body, if you are not the body and the body belongs to you, who are you then? That answer is the soul. Now for our discussion purpose, if it is very difficult, soul can also be easily understood as consciousness. See, just like when I pinch you at a leg, you feel that pain. When I pinch your ears, then also you feel the pain. So that means there is some living force that is spread all over the body, and that, for easier discussion sake, we can take it as consciousness. Consciousness is nothing but the symptom of the soul. So this is one experiment that, this is one analogy that Srila Prabhupada gives to understand how there is something called body and there is something called soul. And based on the same concept, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 text 13 explains, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhirastatra namuhyati. Dehinosmin yata dehe. So Krishna is using two words here, deha and dehi. Deha is referring to the body, and the one which is living in the body, dehi, is nothing but the soul. And he's giving a wonderful analogy. Dehinosmin yata dehe. The soul is situated in the body and is undergoing transformation. The body is undergoing transformation. What are the transformations? Kaumara, Yavana, Jara. So when we were born, our parents were holding us. We were about 3.5 kg. They were holding us in two hands like this. But now you see, after 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, the body has grown. And in fact, the science explains that every 7 years, the whole set of cells in the body, in fact, every second, the cells keep changing. And once in 7 years, there is a complete transformation of all the millions of cells in the body. So the body is no longer the same. But then our name is the same. Mr. Rajesh was Rajesh when he was a 1-year-old boy, when he was a 10-year-old kid, when he was a 20-year-old adolescent, when he was a 40-year man, when he's a 60-year-old man, when he's an 80-year-old man. Rajesh name doesn't change because that characteristic is referring to the soul, dehi, that which is residing within the body, deha. So dehi nosmin yata dehe, kaumaram yavvanam jara, tatha dehantara prapti. Dhiras tatra namuhyati. One who is not bewildered by this change, transformation of the body. So similar, just like there is transformation of body in this whole life, from childhood to youth to old age, similarly, there is also another transformation of the soul from one body to another, and one who is not disturbed by this, he is dhira. Dhiras tatra namuhyati. See how Krishna is very nicely bringing out the concept of the soul. So now that we have heard the concept of the soul, it takes a lot of practice to understand and to feel this, that we are different from this body. But then this is a reality, that body is different and we are different. And in fact, I came across this interesting conversation in one of the books of Srila Prabhupada, that where he says, see, we are not able to feel this difference between body and the soul because we are very closely attached to this. So just like, let's take an example of a person who is very much attached to his car. He loves his car the most. So now I come and when I meet him, I wanted to know more about him, and I ask him, who you are, who are you? And then he says, I am BMW. So then I say, no, I understand that you've got one of the best cars, but tell me who you are. I wish to know about you. And then he says, I am 2016 model. No, I am not asking the model of your car or the age of your car. I want to know who you are. And then he says, I am silver gray. So no, I am not talking about the complexion or the color of your car. I wish to know just more about you. So what is happening in this conversation is, I am talking to him. I wish to know more about the person, and he is describing his car, which is different from him. He is just a driver in the car. So this is what is happening. Krishna gives this analogy in the Bhagavad Gita, that this body is nothing but a car, a vehicle. And the soul is nothing but a driver in the car. So when we are seated in the vehicle, we can think I am this car, but then we are different. The reality is we are different. So this is how Krishna further explains in the Bhagavad Gita. So with this understanding of the body and soul, the concept of boundless happiness can be experienced, as Krishna said in that 6.22, when there are activities connected to the soul and not to the body. And the very fact that we are continuing to do more and more activities of the body and not considering the activities of the soul, that is where we are not able to experience that happiness. Srila Prabhupada also narrates one more interesting story in this connection, wherein there was once a king, and when he had gone to some rounds in the city, he found a nice parrot. He loved that parrot and he wanted to take good care of the parrot, so he brought that parrot back to his kingdom. And then he ordered his servants to make a very nice cage. Rather, he asked them to make a golden cage for the parrot. And he ordered another servant to make sure that he paints the cage every single day. And he told yet another servant to make sure that he dusts and cleans the cage very nicely every day. And when he was about to leave for another tour out of his kingdom, he instructed all of these servants that this is something close to my life, and I want all of you to take extremely good care of this parrot more than yourselves. With this instruction, he left on a tour, and the servants, very honestly, sincerely, were executing their duties. After a few days, the king returned to the kingdom, and he rushed to the place where this golden cage with the parrot was kept. And to his dismay, his shock, he was shocked to see that the parrot was dead. He just could not take it anymore. He called all of them and awarded the capital punishment for having not obeyed his words. But then these servants, poor servants, so they were trying to give an explanation that we did all that you said. So now my question to the audience is, why do you think that the parrot was dead? One person was every day cleaning, dusting, another person was painting. So all good care as directed by the king was followed by these servants. But yet the parrot was dead. And the answer is, the king had never instructed the servants to feed the parrot. The food aspect was missing. So the Shastras give this example to drive home a point that yes, we can create a beautiful cage, we can paint the cage, we can take care of the cage, absolutely no problem in that. But we also need to feed the parrot. So the parrot is symbolizing the soul. That is us, the living entities. And the food that will give us the energy is the spiritual thoughts, spiritual practices. Reading Bhagavad Gita, chanting the names of God. All of these practices are like giving food to the soul. Just like we all have this experience and no further explanation is needed. If you just don't take food for a day, you'll naturally feel tired, exhausted. You'll not have that enthusiasm to work. So similarly, the soul is now completely dormant. And that is why we are not able to experience that happiness. Now one may say, no, what is the connection between happiness and this thing? I understood soul, I understood the body. So it is nothing but the very example, the story that we discussed at the very beginning of this session, that it's just like saying we are taking good care of fourth, third and second wives, but completely forgot to take care of the first wife, completely forgot to feed the parrot. So it's like, say, suppose a person has a desire to go to Delhi and he has expressed that desire to me. And now he is rushing towards a train in the railway station, wherein the train is destined to go towards Mumbai. Now, having known of his desire to travel to Delhi, I am trying to stop him and say, no, this train is heading towards Mumbai. You wanted to go to Delhi. No. So he's replying, no, I don't have time to listen to all of this. I just want to go on board the train. No, but this train is going to a wrong destination. That doesn't matter. I don't have time. So this is what is happening to all of us in the day-to-day lives. We want happiness. We want to go to Delhi. We want that boundless transcendental happiness, unlimited happiness. But then when Shastras are giving the ways and methodologies to experience that, We say, no, we don't have time for that. So no, just let me do this work. So the takeaway, the conclusion of this session is the boundless happiness, Sukham Atyantikam, the supreme happiness can be experienced when it is Atindriyam, something beyond the body, something that is coming in contact with the soul. So it is our good fortune that we have come in touch with, we have been born in this holy nation. We have been blessed with scriptures like Bhagavad Gita. So we should all take good advantage of these spiritual things available to us and make our lives successful. The profession that we are currently having, we could be a businessman, we could be an employee, we could be an entrepreneur, we could be a housewife, doesn't matter. Whatever we are doing, whatever our profession is, parallelly, we should start feeding the parrot, start feeding the soul, start taking care of the first wife, and that will enrich our lives. It gives us a whole lot of new perception of this world. And when you start developing this perception, your vision of this world around you will also change. See, these days we so frequently hear of students committing suicide when they fail in the exams, celebrities killing themselves for whatever reasons they have faced. So in other words, we have created a very brittle civilization around us. The people are not able to take things in stride and face them as they come. A century ago, you had never heard of something like suicides. That's because the perspective of life is not known. We have not understood the importance and the value of our lives, human form of life. So this is the great fortune for all of us that we have got. And as we were discussing throughout this session, to feed the soul, one of the easiest ways to feed the soul, to take care of the first wife, is by chanting the names of God. So I request now all of you to sit erect and close your eyes wherever you are, whatever position you are seated in. So let's chant the Maha Mantra for 21 times. I hope you all know the Maha Mantra. So we can all chant together. I'll say start and we can all chant 21 times. It's just going to take about 2.5 minutes. So, and as Prabhupada always said, we don't believe in giving post-dated checks. We just don't want to promise some things and leave. So we also want you all to experience this boundless happiness. So please join me in chanting this Maha Mantra for 21 times. Start. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all. Before we move on to the questions section, I wish to announce a few things about our upcoming Sri Krishna Janmashtami festival. So this time Janmashtami, the advent of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, is on 11th and 12th of August, Tuesday and Wednesday, the next Tuesday and Wednesday. And this time, due to the current situation of the COVID and all these things, so we have decided that we will have a complete online celebration. So in other words, digital celebration of Sri Krishna Janmashtami. And we have planned about 20 hours of live streaming of various events for all the age groups, and a lot of exciting features, in fact. So we have got the Abhishek and the Nauka Vihar of the Lord. So the Nauka Vihar is, we take the Lord on the boat ride in our temple Kalyani. We perform a grand Abhishek with Panchamrita, Panchagavya, fruit juices, flowers, and all different varieties of aratis. And then we have some intellectually stimulating panel discussions. In one panel discussion on inspiring message and journey of ISKCON Bangalore, we have a few celebrities joining us, like Mr. Anupam Kher, Ms. Hema Malini, and our chairman Madhu Pandit Das, and so many more. And similarly, we have another panel discussion on secret of ISKCON kitchens, where we have the celebrity chef Mr. Sanjeev Kapoor, popular nutritionist Rujita Divekar, and many more. And we have yet another panel discussion on No One Shall Go Hungry. And in this we have Mr. Mohandas Pai and Mr. Anand Narsimhan, executive editor of CNN IBN, as the moderator. We have the World Food Program UN President, Mr. Bishav Parjuli. So, and many more joining. So like this, we have panel discussions. And then we have devotional concerts, music concerts, so by famous celebrities. And then we have some children theme based stories and some quiz and activities, and like this a whole lot of and we have also got some message from the popular mahants and heads of different Krishna temples across the country, and they'll be giving their Ashirvachanam. So we request all of you to stay tuned on 11th and 12th for the Janmashtami celebration. And before we go on to the Q&A session, I wish to show a few posters to you over here. So explaining to you about all these events. Can we see some posters here? So the first one that you see here is nothing but the Abhishekam. You can see the Abhishekam poster. Just 1 second. Shall I move the... Sorry for the interruption, just 1 second. So this is the Nauka Vihar poster that you see. And this is Abhishekam. So this was the panel discussion with Anupam Kher and Hema Malini. And we also have Mr. Kasturi Rangan, who was the former chairman of ISRO. And this is the panel discussion on No One Shall Go Hungry. So we have one music concert by very famous Srimati Anuradha Paudwal. So she is performing 1 hour concert on Krishna Bhajans. And then we have another panel discussion on secrets of ISKCON kitchens. And we have yet another interesting music concert by Sri Anup Jalota, who is quite popular. And then we have Bharatanatyam dance performance by Rukmini Vijay Kumar. And then we also have a concert by the great granddaughters of the Bharat Ratna awardee MS Subbulakshmi. So they are going to perform. So like this, there are various exciting events planned for all of you. I request all of you to visit our ISKCON Bangalore YouTube channel. And the link of this page has been posted at the chat section below. So after this session, request you to please visit that for more detailed information on this event. Now let's go to the questions. I'll just take a few questions in the interest of time. So the first question is how to recognize the transformation of body from childhood to old age and further. So as we heard in that verse, this is something relatively very easy. In fact, if you want to see the presence of soul in all these transformations, so that's the toughest part. But when you're externally seeing that there is a gross transformation in the body. So the child was only this much, could hold in the 2 hands. So, but then now it has grown bigger. So the body has changed, transformed completely. But yet, as I was mentioning in the session, we are known by the same name. We have the very same family. So our profession continues to be the same. So it is relatively quite easy to know the transformation of the body as such, but to see that the soul is the constant element that is not changing in all these transformations. So that's the challenge, and that is what Krishna is saying. Just like there is transformation in this body from all these phases, similarly there is something called death. See, somehow in our Indian tradition and context, we are always restricted to talk about death. I always had this question when I was a child, that what happens after a man dies? Where does he go? So then when I had asked this question to my father, he had told me that a person dies and that's how he becomes a child again. So the whole understanding was yes, how, but still I could not understand and fit it into my small intelligence that how such a big man became a small man, small baby. So that is what it is. So this requires more of reading and association of the devotees, and with time we'll be able to see that we are not this body and but the soul. So the next question by Miss Gayatri Srinath is, can we be happy when the body is in pain? The answer is yes, it is very much possible, because in fact this understanding of the soul being different from the body is the key for this different person. It's all about the perceptions. So when somebody is too much in the bodily conscious that I am this body, even the smallest of the insult, slightest of the pains will cause us the greatest of the pains, distress. But as we understand and apply these concepts of Gita and understand that this is something different from my body. So suppose, let's take the same analogy of a car driver and a car. So and you have been driving the car and you come across I mean, you met with an accident. Yes, you indeed feel sorry for that, that your car was damaged. But then there is a difference between your car getting damaged and me getting, my body getting affected. No doubt, because the more we would have felt for the car, so we will feel that pain. I do agree. So similarly, when I say that now we are talking of all of these philosophy, so suppose I have fever, I'll be definitely down. I'll be morose. I will not have this kind of an enthusiasm to speak to you. But then, so the external conditions, we have no control over it. The body has temperature, it has to take rest. So, but we are talking of the perception. We are talking of how you can mitigate the pain. So, answering your question, if you start understanding this concept that we are different from this body, so the pain that you would experience otherwise will 100% be lesser. That does not again mean we should not take care. We should attend to our body. We should meet a medical practitioner. We should follow his prescriptions, diet, and try to come out of the disease. All of this is essential. But while undergoing this tribulation, while facing this disease, we are not disturbed because we understand that I am not the one who is affected. Rather, my body has been affected. My body is, down with fever. So this understanding will give us the strength to face such tribulations. Now let's apply the same philosophy to the modern context, wherein the generation, the youth, just cannot take any one good direction or advice given by the elders or the parents. They feel, why is he telling me? I know everything. What does he know? I am coming from the Gen Z, age of technology. And he has been born and brought up he doesn't even know how to operate a mobile phone, and he is teaching me. So people are not willing to take the advice, and that is all because and when such environment they grow up, and when there is some kind of an unfavorable incident, when some kind of an insult they happen to experience, they just go to the extreme. They just can't take anymore. I was the person who was celebrated all over the country. I was a celebrity. And today, this has been happening to me. So they just can't figure it out. So, and they go to the extremes of even killing themselves. So all of this is happening because we are totally, considered that this body is me. So this is what happens when I consider car to be me, myself. So the pain can be mitigated if we have this understanding. So one more question we will take. Swamiji, when my body is tired, we used to say I am tired, not as my body is tired. Please throw some light on this. Yes, when you say I am tired, it is nothing but referring to your body. So when you say I, you are referring to, in the day-to-day context and usage of words, we don't use this, so accurately. So, but definitely when you say I am tired, it is referring to your body. So because the soul can always be active irrespective of how many hours of activity we do. So, and the body is the one which is getting exhausted. So the analogy that we used was meant for driving home a certain message. So, and there are many more analogies, stories that we shall continue to discuss in the future sessions. We shall have this session week after week. And I will definitely share more analogies and stories to understand what is the difference between this body and the soul. And we can get to hear more. The last question for the day, we have mental peace can be by Miss Gayatri Srinath. Mental peace can be attained by taking care of soul, but when body is in pain, can we have peace? So this is the same thing that we discussed so far. Yes, definitely it is not so very easy to experience that peace when the body is in pain. So, but what is possible is to understand that you are not the body. That itself, in fact, let me give you a very simple example. You try this out in any of your future encounters. So suppose you have been to a hospital for whatever reason, and the doctor is now supposed to give you an injection, or for even for that case, if you're performing a blood test, okay, so they prick a small needle into your finger. So I have observed this, that when you are constantly focusing on this, now they are going to prick, now they are going to prick my finger, and you will immediately, the moment we feel that sensation. But on the other hand, you let your finger and you try to focus on something else, you try to see somewhere else, definitely you'll still feel that sensation. That's the same if we are talking of the quantum of pain that was injected, that is the same, exactly the same. But the very fact that your focus and attention was somewhere else, the quantum of pain as experienced by you will be less. So in other words, the external world around you can give you different kinds of pain. The Shastras tell the pains, that the distress that comes to us can be majorly categorized into three: Adhyatmik, Adidaivik, and Adibhautik. Adhyatmik is the pain or the suffering caused by one's own body and mind. So you are disturbed about something, or your body is not keeping well, that's Adhyatmik Klesha. So the distress caused due to one's own body and mind. So Adibhautik is the distress caused by some other living entities. So it could be human beings, it could be reptiles, it could be a mosquito. So anything other than you, outside of you, and that which is causing suffering to you, that's Adibhautik. Adidaivik Kleshas. Adidaivik is something which is caused by natural calamities. It could be famine, it could be drought, it could be floods, it could be earthquake, and any of these things. So if you categorize any of all our difficulties, all of the difficulties that we experience in our day-to-day lives can be categorized into one of these three buckets: Adhyatmik, Adibhautik, or Adidaivik. So now the understanding of Bhagavad Gita is, when we start practicing spiritual life, we don't have control on what our body and mind has in store for us, what the other living entities are going to give us suffering, what natural calamities will be forced upon me. We really do not have any control over that. But all that we can have control over is our own consciousness, perceptions. So the science of perception, it's a very big science. There is so much to understand about perceptions. The world is all about perceptions. So all that Bhagavad Gita helps us in developing is a spiritual perception, the perception that you are different from this body. So when you are able to disassociate yourself from the body, from the external situation, you can continue to doing your duty, you can continue your profession, you continue serving your spouse, family, children, parents, everything. But then your perspective of life, your attitude towards life will change. So in other words, you will not start reacting, you will start understanding how to respond to situations in life. That is possible only when we are able to understand this concept of the soul, which is transcendental to the body. So thank you all for joining in today's session. We shall meet on next Sunday. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.